Hello, my name is Zoe Dean, and today we are going to be discussing Chapter 6 Social Policy to Address the Worst Economic Catastrophe in U.S. History. America's Great Depression began with the dramatic crash of the stock market on Black Thursday, October 24, 1929, when 16 million shares of stock were quickly sold by panicking investors who had lost faith in the American economy. At the height of the Depression in 1933, nearly 25% of the nation's total workforce were unemployed.
American presidential election held November 8, 1932, Democrat Franklin D. Roosevelt defeated Republican President Herbert Hoover. The 1932 election was the first held during the Great Depression, and it represented a dramatic shift in the political alignment of the country. Till then, Republicans had dominated the presidency for almost the entire period. Roosevelt's main support was not only the working class, but also the middle class. This was because they didn't believe that the Republicans could help them get out of their economic problems of the nation anymore. And because many of them had been directly affected by the Depression, they were ready for a change. Immediately after his election, FDR sought out effective ways to help this broken country by implementing the New Deal. This included important acts such as the Emergency Banking Act, the WPA, the NYA, the Wagner Act, and the Social Security Act.
At the time of his election, the Great Depression was crippling the U.S. economy. Many people were withdrawing their money from banks and keeping it at home. In response, the new president called a special session of Congress the day after the inauguration and declared a 4-day banking holiday that shut down the entire banking system. This action was followed a few days later by the passage of the Emergency Banking Act. The legislation, which provided for the reopening of the banks as soon as examiners found them to be financially secure, was prepared by Treasury staff during Herbert Hoover's administration and was introduced on March 9, 1933.
FDR created the WPA with an executive order on May 6, 1935. The WPA was designed to provide relief for the unemployed by providing jobs and income for millions of Americans. At its height in late 1938, more than 3.3 million Americans worked for the WPA. The NYA was a New Deal agency sponsored by FDR that focused on providing work and education for Americans between the ages of 16 and 25. The purpose of the Wagner Act was to establish the legal right of most workers to organize or join labor unions and to bargain collectively with their employers. The Social Security Act established a permanent national old age pension system through employer and employee contributions. The system was later extended to include dependents, the disabled, and other groups. Today, millions of Americans lack sufficient food, as well as homes or shelters. Many of those who are hungry and or homeless are employed and are still unable to meet the cost of basic needs for themselves and their families.